Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Cross Talk. Well, Peter, the moment has arrived. You know, many people around the world are trembling. They know that their fate will be decided because it is time for the thumbs ups and thumbs downs of the week. And I'll go first. Big thumbs down is this massive evacuation from Afghanistan is turning into an absolute farce. We're getting reports about Afghans arriving with child brides. In other words, it's basically rape, statutory rape, according to U.S. law and most of the country's laws. We're getting reports about polygamies, so people arriving with multiple wives. We're also getting reports of people who have already been deported once and are now back in U.S. custody. So, and the Pentagon has said that, well, at least 50,000 Afghans will be settled in the United States. So if the Pentagon says at least 50,000, we need to double that number because they're obviously underestimated. So we're talking about 100,000. These are people coming from one of the most primitive societies in the world, with all sorts of terrible practices. I mean, child brides.
They happen to all be translators too, isn't that
exactly? All translators, amazingly linguistically gifted country, and the Bachi boys, this is the very tribal society, and you're bringing them in to a country which, not to mention the fact that this country practices a different religion. You're spreading the Afghan chaos right into the heartland of the United States, and this is going to end in absolute disaster.
Well, I asked. It's not even a rhetorical question. It's a question that makes me really angry to posit. But I mean, if this is how the military gets out, this is how they operate in a procedure which is difficult, but that's what they're trained to do. I mean, we give them $800 billion a year, George. So you think that they could have do an evacuation,
right?
But who did you evacuate? Who are they? So you ran the evacuation like you ran the war, and you're going to run, and the resettlement is going to be probably on par to both.
Yeah.
Running the war and the evacuation. So what hope do any of us have that they're going to get this right? Number two, the irony of ironies, this cultural hegemony that the West wanted to bring to Afghanistan. We started the first women's studies program in the history of Afghanistan. And what kind of people are you bringing in? Are they women's studies people? I don't think so. And they need translators to help the translators understand.
But also with the child brides, you're saying, well, boy, this American education in feminism has obviously made a huge impact on Afghan society, arriving with your 12-year-old brides. So you can see how powerful this, successful this has been. And I think that you really are talking about. It's like almost like there's a sense there that they want to punish the American people, they want to punish the European people. Everybody has to be punished for, I guess, not supporting the Afghan war enough. I mean, you have to feel that these military types have always been enraged by the fact that they weren't being given enough money, and then finally Trump and then Biden pulled American forces out, so they feel that they're getting their own back by inflicting this on the public, because we know they're not going to go and live in the Upper West Side of New York. They're not going to go and live in Martha's Vineyard. They're not going to live in Nantucket or in the Hamptons. They're going to be dumped right where the mainstream America is. So they are going to have to pay the price. They're the ones who are going to be punished.
Well, and on top of it, the punishment extends, because if you look at the mindset of the left, of academia, of the media, et cetera, I mean, that's how they live. Those are their values. They're equal to our values, okay? So polygamy, child brought, well, that's what they do. That's what they're saying. This is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense, okay?
Of course.
And I find it to be an insult, an insult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I mean,
right.
you want to go and remake their world, but no, you're going to allow them to remake ours. Really?
That's right. And there is an ideological element to it, which is somehow, well, so you got these Western kind of liberals and progressives, so they don't want to, stigmatize, backward societies or Muslim societies. So they want to say that it's all kind of the same. Well, the microaggression that you get at Harvard is on the same level as child brides in Afghanistan. That way you can say, okay, well, I'm a feminist, I'm an equal opportunity feminist. It's the same thing. Somebody, you don't like a joke somebody makes, that's the same thing as child brides.
So you want to fight the patriarchy in Afghanistan and all across the world, but you import the patriarchy into the United States. Is that how this works?
That's how it works. Yeah.
This is a catastrophe. And you're right. I like how you put it. It's punishing the American people for it, because they're not going to be living, in Barack Obama's neighborhood. Okay, probably not Nancy's. Probably not Chuck Schumer.
No, definitely not. Not in Beverly Hills.
How many? And Sandy Cortez. How many are you going to put on your couch? All right. All righty, a little closer afield for George and I. We had the Biden-Zelensky meeting, which was very interesting. Look back a couple of days. George put it perfectly. Really, and one of the reasons why I want to talk about it again is that Joe Biden says we're done with nation building. Look at the transcript. Look at the meeting that they had. Nation building is right on track, and the American people are going to pay for it. And it's like lighting a fuse. So now the military-industrial complex is, well, one grift is over. Let's get this one warmed up, okay?
Yep.
I mean, this is one of the things that, you look at all this bemoaning in the mainstream media, which doesn't make any sense, because it's going to be one of my points later here. But, they can moan and groan about bad optics, and they are bad optics, okay? But what about policy? And this is what George and I talk about, okay? Things look bad, obviously, and many times intentionally bad, okay? But what about the policy? So this is a catastrophe, it's a defeat, it's an embarrassment. Well, I mean, is policy going to catch up with your moral outrage?
Right.
And the Zelensky meeting exemplifies that, okay? Encouraging someone to encouraging a president that was elected to be to reconcile the differences within Ukraine. No, they've only gotten worse. Shutting down civil society, shutting down political parties, shutting down media, using an elected official as some kind of hostage in a swap with another person the Russians are claimed to have had. I mean, this is tin pot stuff, okay? And it's invited right into the White House, okay? And then Michael McFaul cheers the courage of Zelensky. To violate every norm that these people claim to support.
No, I think excellent points, all of them. So what you now have, you've basically given him a blank check to conduct any repression he wants, because there's really no repression at all that he can carry out that will meet with any kind of criticism from Washington, from Brussels, or anyone. I mean, that's it. You basically got a free hand. Anyone at all, you can say, oh, he's pro-Russian, he's working for Moscow. Imprison him. But good. Well, that's all in the name of democracy. That's all democracy. And what they're doing is this reckless policy of encouraging Ukraine to wage a war against its own people, wage a kind of a proxy war against Russia, but thinking that, well, we'll always be able to restrain him at the last moment, because we obviously don't want to go to war with Russia, but we can just keep doing this, so hey, keep at it, and then but at the last moment, we're just going to restrain him. That is the most frivolous, reckless policy, and historically, it's never worked out well.
And the images of the airport are still with us, and they're talking this way. Hey, oh, on top of it, it's Victor Orderbaum's the problem, right?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
right.
that's right. Yeah, my next thumbs down is Josep Borrell. Josep Borrell is the EU High Representative on Foreign Policy. It's a wonderful title. So he is in charge of EU foreign policy.
And he's the butt of every single joke these days. Go ahead.
So he penned an article in the New York Times earlier this week, in which he's, again, doing the thing that EU people love to do, which is, our own independent foreign policy. We're going to be doing this foreign policy, where America isn't willing to step up, we're going to do it. And as first order of business, he's going to create this European rapid reaction force of 5,000 people. Now, I've been around a long time, and I've heard about these rapid reaction forces forever. It's always, oh, great. Well, we're not going to do nation buildings. We're not going to spend huge amounts on military. We're just going to have a rapid reaction force. Going to send them here. Now, anyone who knows anything about military knows that 5,000 is nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's not enough to secure a building and an airport.
And you need 150,000 to back up those 5,000.
Exactly. How many are going to be doing cooking? How many are going to be doing, setting up the barracks? How many are going to be doing all the administrative clerical work? I mean, the numbers quickly add up. Which is, again, like when Vietnam, I mean, they had 500,000 at one, but that doesn't mean they had 500,000 in combat. Most of the people were just doing, backup, bureaucratic administrative work. And even that wasn't enough, as the Americans found. So 5,000, and then the EU can think, well, we have our independent foreign policy. Where are they going to send this 5,000? They're going to send them to Mali. Well, they're not going to achieve anything whatsoever there. So, but it's kind of an amazing thing of how these people with these fat salaries, Josep Borrell, Ursula von der Leyen, and the rest of them, they come up with this thing, which sounds great. Whoa, a rapid reaction force. Well, that sounds like a nice idea. But it is so half-baked. It's just a joke.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to recruit at these gender studies programs, and and then they'll have, at least 300 of the 5,000 will be equity officers. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Well, they're also in the 5,000. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, there'll have to be a brigade of people to make sure that brunch is done correctly. Okay, no matter where they are in the
very much so. That's definitely, because and you got to make sure that everyone's catered to, because you might have Muslims, in the armed forces. You got to make sure that you have dishes. There's pork for some people, no pork for others. You got all that requires a lot of careful planning.
Depending on your religion, I can't fight on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Okay.
Exactly. That's right.
Okay. Kind of a derivative of what I said earlier. Again, watching cable news and looking at the broadsheets, there's been such a fundamental obfuscation of what has happened in the last few weeks with Afghanistan, is that individuals made mistakes. Either it was Trump, or it was Biden or Milley or Blinken. No, folks, it's the entire endeavor that is wrong. Okay, I mean, that's why I find this story so tiresome, is that they're looking for the one individual. Right. No. It's the ideology. That's what's wrong. I mean, for all the bemoaning of what's going on here, the Israeli prime minister is sitting with Joe falling. Apparently he fell asleep. But I mean, basically, what is he there for? Got to get Iran now. Okay. Yeah, maybe your focus is off Afghanistan. Good. You've got some free time. Iran. Okay. Nothing has changed, folks. Nothing has changed at all. Nothing at all. And don't be fooled by this. Don't be fooled by this at all. America has been shamed on the world stage. Yeah, so what? Do you think it cares what NATO says? Do you really care? I mean, do you really believe that? Right. No, because people in the Pentagon and the contractors, they don't give a hoot what anybody in the world thinks.
No. Well, and why should they? I mean, you have to say, why should they care what Boris Johnson says. I mean, it's ridiculous. Emmanuel Macron. I mean, it really is like, how many divisions has the Pope? Like what have you done for me lately? I mean, of course they don't care what the Europeans say in criticism, and I think perfectly appropriately they don't consult their European quote allies unquote and do exactly whatever they want, because the Europeans have agreed to this setup whereby they have this wonderful thing called NATO, which is all run by the Americans, and then they can pretend that they're doing something in the world and they have some sort of a world role. Well, if they're prepared to be doormats, then people will tread on them and clean, their shoes, the soles of their feet on them. That's exactly right. So the notion that they were supposed to consult Boris Johnson, well, why should we? I mean, I don't know, there's no reason to call up Boris Johnson. I've got other things to do. So, I mean, all that is, so absurd. And I think that just leads on to one of my thumbs ups, and that was because a fellow gaggler posted an article which I missed. It's an article in the Gray Zone about Ashraf Ghani. It's a very long article. One of their writers, Ben Norton, and Ashraf Ghani is a kind of almost a neoliberal poster boy. He was set up, he was a professor at an American university, wrote a book about failed states, so he should know something about that. And apparently that book on failed states had a blurb from Francis Fukuyama, the sort of the master of the interventions. So he was a pure creation of the kind of neoliberal, neocon, military industrial complex, you name it. And this was a complete and utter debacle under his auspices, under this person that they personally selected, and they said, this is the right man, failed state, Fukuyama, he'll be good, and he waltzes off with 169 million or whatever it was. Thank you, Francis Fukuyama.
Well, as a member of the technocratic elite and holding a neoliberal ideology, I've seen reports, okay, I can't corroborate it, obviously I wasn't in the room, but one of Ghani's last concerns was how to digitalize payments for his soldiers. How do we get everyone PayPal here? I mean, it's extraordinary. The house is burning down.
Right.
And you're checking, can we get PayPal to these guys? Okay, but it makes perfect sense, George. It makes perfect sense. Right. I mean, someone that wrote a book on failed states and is running a failed state. I mean, that should tell you everything you need.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And he was celebrated by all of these people. Sorry.
Popular, George.
No. So it's a. Yeah. So here's somebody who is personally selected. Madeleine Albright, cultivated him. All of them cultivated. This is our man, and he presides over this utter debacle. And you think, but again, no one's going to learn any lessons. People just try to pick on some minor issue here and there to quibble. Oh, yeah, it was this so and so's fault. It was so and so's fault. The whole thing was an absolute disaster. And this whole thing, and we've talked about this before, we're not doing any nation building. You said that after Vietnam. It's like everyone said this after Vietnam. No more nation building. No. And then no more boots on the ground. No boots on the ground, until the next war. So all of that is completely unbelievable.
Is anybody interested in getting the $169 million back? Have you heard?
169 million. What's that compared to the 90 billion? I mean, it's just all of it is just sort of dropped in the ocean. It's like it's pocket change.
Yeah, I bet that pocket change would change the life of a lot of people back home.
I could use some of that.
I wouldn't mind it either. Okay, all righty. Another thing, I'm kind of all derivations from the same theme here, but this lack of introspection about how empire and the way it's practiced by the West, particularly the United States, there is no introspection here whatsoever. We have sanctions that continue. I look at the media, and you and I may differ on this one here, but they're prepping us for another intervention, possibly even into Afghanistan. And I don't discount the fact that some kind of force may be and need to be used if ISIS and Al Qaeda rear their ugly head again. But I mean, the way it's being presented, it's a certainty. And I want to stay away from that, because it's Tolkien Gulf resolution stuff all over. What it is it's priming us to do it again. And I keep telling everyone, and one of the reasons why we do this is don't be fooled by these people, particularly the people they're saying we might have to go back in. They're the ones that are the architects of these wars. And we have to be very wary of what they say and what their personal vested interest is to have a more conflict continue. Because I don't see a change of heart in Iraq, in Syria, and Yemen. I don't see it at all. As a matter of fact, well, we need to be there because they keep an eye on all these other places. That's what they're telling us.
Well, I think that's it, and I think that what's really happening here. I mean, they're not going to go in. They're not going to go back in to fight the Taliban. I think much more likely is they're going to forge an alliance with the Taliban, and the Pentagon has already hinted at this. They're going to forge an alliance with the Taliban to fight ISIS. I remember. The rationale for the continuing U.S. presence in Iraq is fighting ISIS. With Syria, I mean, there's all they haven't quite figured out which one is it. Is it helping the Kurds? Is it thwarting Putin? But throughout it all, there's the one that they can always fall back on is fighting ISIS. So I think that's going to be quite a likely scenario. I think it's an absolute disaster trying to align yourself with the Taliban against ISIS. That is just an absolutely horrific plan. But I think that that's quite likely, given that the Pentagon has already hinted at this, given that there's already negotiations between the US and the Taliban, and the fact that they left all this heavy weaponry and light weaponry to the Taliban may be part of this, that this is the next thing, the next big thing. Fighting ISIS, this nebulous entity called ISIS, which is everywhere, and it's nobody quite knows what the hell it is.
But also, I think that's a really good point. But I think also is that again we have to really step back and look what's going on. Does the United States want to intervene in another ongoing civil war? Because this is essentially what's happening here. Now, your point of leaving that kind of military hardware behind, again, I want to be very fair here. I mean, I over the last 24, 36 hours, I've seen plenty of footage of and actually it was put on Instagram, and then somebody saved it because the soldiers that put it on Instagram got in a lot of trouble. But I mean, they were smashing a lot of high-tech stuff. Now, I don't really think that they're particularly interested in the helicopters. They didn't need it to win, okay? And their opponents don't have it, okay? But it is a lot of those small arms and munitions are quite valuable. I mean, there's a lot of ammo left behind. So that's a very interesting nuance that George just mentioned there as a contingency. If the Taliban is gonna fight these guys, we left them a lot of material to do it. It's very interesting, but again, it's always giving a reason to insert yourself into a situation that you may not have much control over all of the last 20 years.
Well, I think that's why I think it's useful to go back in time and think that in the 90s, the United States was in alliance with the Mujahideen. It didn't have any real problems with the Taliban until they turned on the United States, which of course often happens. That's the classic blowback. So it may well be a kind of a replay of that. Hey, the Taliban could be quite useful to us, make life difficult for Russia, make life difficult for China, might be quite a useful ally. So I think that that is quite a possible scenario, particularly as now they're becoming obsessed with the idea that, Russia and China are going to beat us to the punch. They're going to move into Afghanistan and they're going to align with the Taliban. So we've got to, head them off, and we've got to join forces with the Taliban. So I think that's where I think the danger lies.
Yeah, but there's a number of things for such a scenario, and given the incompetence of the ruling elites, I'm not going to discount it. But then they're going to have to unfreeze the money, the money that the IMF has and other funds that the former government had control over, because There is a growing humanitarian crisis there. There's been a drought. There's food shortages. I mean, there's a very interesting thing going on, and maybe these two opposite things can happen at the same. They want revenge, they want punishment, but they want to somehow recruit. Okay, and we have to see where that goes there, because I mean that money, irrespective of if it's
but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't release that money, because again, the Taliban, who's really worried about the Taliban? I mean, Iran is worried about the Taliban. Iran, Taliban created.
China's worried about the Taliban.
I mean, yeah. I mean, so therefore, given that the United States is much more hostile to Iran than it is to the that kind of Sunni fundamentalism, they would be quite happy to see all sorts of problems. I mean, in their previous incarnation, the Taliban did cause a lot of problems for Iran. Baluchi separatism and terrorist acts within Iran, and then they also persecuted the Shia Muslims. So again, the Taliban is probably going to now be seen as a useful proxy for the United States. But again, in 2001, they only really went after the Taliban because of bin Laden. I mean, it was, they didn't think bin Laden was just going to turn on his patrons in that way. Up until then, bin Laden was quite useful. I mean, he was useful in Afghanistan. He was useful in Bosnia, useful again, Chechnya. They didn't think that he would go and do this to the Americans. That's why they turned against bin Laden and as a result of that against the Taliban. So by no means is it certainly that they're going to get that this enmity towards the Taliban will continue.
Or there's another variant: just keep it a mess, okay? And the U.S. is good at doing that, okay? Just keep it in constant movement and chaos. That is something that the U.S. is very good at, because as we've said, discussing so many times, Syria is I liken it to a roulette wheel. Keep turning it and throwing the ball in until you get the number you want. And they can do that also with Afghanistan, right. Which again, I don't see it generates any really good results, but maybe chaos is the desired result. That's an awful foreign policy, but it's more and more often the case.
Right. So my next, yes. Okay. So then moving away then from that is a few domestic issues. So we have the ACLU penning an article in the New York Times advocating on behalf of vaccine mandates. So let's say vaccine mandates is apparently compatible with civil liberties. In other words, the government coercing individuals to take drugs that they don't want to take is somehow compatible with civil liberties. And of course, the ACLU, boom, always in the forefront of the fight for a woman's right to choose. So that's fine. Hey, politicians, hands off women's bodies. So that apparently government has no right to do, even though a perfectly reasonable argument can say, hey, government has a responsibility to protect the unborn. That is a legitimate governmental interest. So you can easily make that, but no, that has no right. But apparently, government can force you to take the vaccine, even though, by the logic of it, it doesn't really make very much sense, because you're only threatening yourself. If you don't take the vaccine, if those who have taken the vaccine should be safe. So, but boom, the ACLU, whatever is a fashionable position, the ACLU will be there advocating.
If you're against a woman's right to abortion, you're a misogynist. If you're against mandates, you're an ultra-nationalist, white supremacist. Okay, I mean it's amazing that they can keep a right to abortion and mandate in the air at the same time. It's really extraordinary how they can do this, and it's completely absurd. But I mean, the American Civil Liberties Union, when you and I were coming up, they were somebody to contend with, and they had good people, smart people, and they usually won because they were on the right side of things.
Right.
We've talked about this before, but I mean, they've just completely collapsed. I mean, what a great esteemed organization that is in complete disrepute right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is gibberish. You cannot agree on those two issues simultaneously.
No.
It tells you haven't thought about it at all.
Right. No, exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing you're supposed to do, civil libertarian, is you protect the individual against government coercion. I mean, that's your job. No, not for ACLU.
Well, they did it up until about 5 years ago.
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to circle back. Biden is releasing some more of the 9/11 documents, okay, which is kind of interesting. Also, is that from what I understand, a number of the survivors, the family survivors and friends of the events of 9/11 have basically told Joe, you can't show up at our events, okay? Right. You're not welcomed, all right? Right. I don't know if that was the impetus of it. I mean, apparently on the campaign that he said he would release more. We have this fiasco in Afghanistan playing out, and now some of these documents are going to be more. Well, why are they holding I mean, it's 20 years.
I don't know. I mean, there was somewhere released. Was it under Trump or under Obama?
Yeah, under Trump.
Under Trump. Okay,
the 28 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, the 28 pages again. Quite damaging because again there was a Saudi government involvement with the terrorists, as everyone had suspected. So it'd be quite interesting what else we're going to find. And again, no evidence of Iraqi involvement, no evidence of Iranian involvement, no evidence of Libyan involvement. So all of the people that you've attacked had no involvement with 9/11. But your ally, the Saudis, they clearly were involved.
Yeah, well, you could probably go on MSNBC and say Assad was behind 9/11, and people just nod their head.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. You know, Assad, Putin, you know, were involved. that is interesting. So you bring up Biden. I want to bring up the awfulness, embarrassment of his continually bringing up his son, Beau Biden. You know, all right. It's his son. Obviously, it was very distressing for him to lose a son, but nonetheless, it's not brain cancer, exactly. But it's not appropriate for you to bring it up when it's somebody else who's suffering a loss. You know, you're there to talk to the people who have suffered a loss. So when he goes to these the parents of servicemen who were killed, 13 who were killed. In a recent attack on Kabul airport, when he goes to them, they really don't want to hear about your son. You know, they want him to address their concerns. And then, of course, yeah, exactly, looking at his watch. And really, it's just an appalling thing. Imagine if Trump had done that. Imagine how the media would have responded in outrage. Yet today, there's an article in the New York Times saying, "Oh, the death of Beau has profoundly affected." Well, yeah, okay. Most people, you know, if they lose a child, that is, it does affect them. That's not really the issue. The issue is why is he bringing it up in inappropriate context, particularly as Beau did not die in combat, and Beau did not serve in the military. Beau was a judge advocate general. He was in the he was essentially a prosecutor, so he's a military prosecutor. So he wasn't actually serving in the military. So in no way has this any relevance, and it's just the height of bad taste and just bad manners for him to do this.
I hope I don't get my timeline incorrect and call me on it if I did. But Abraham Lincoln, when he was in the White House, he lost a son. A little boy. Was it Willie? What's his name? I'm not sure. Well, when he gave the Gettysburg Address, he didn't invoke his son.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you look at the historical record, I mean, he was devastated by the loss of his son, and he was fighting a civil war, the worst military conflict in American history. And he was still commander in chief, and he was still firing people that didn't do what he wanted to do. So, I mean, I can appreciate grief. We've all had grief in our life, but not everyone is the president of the United States.
And again, it used to be not uncommon, not just for Lincoln, but for political leaders to lose sons in wars. I mean, Anthony Eden, the former prime minister, He lost a son in World War II. He never brought this up. It's just people just used to just do it. You as a proper responsible leader, you're supposed to lead. You're not supposed to ask people to feel sorry for you.
Stalin lost a son, and he never.
Stalin lost a son. He didn't bring that up either.
Not at all. Okay. A thumbs up, and I want to tie these together. A thumbs up and a thumbs down. Tucker Carlson for going after Lindsey Graham mercilessly. Bravo. And then Mark Levin going loony, going complete loony. 2 weeks in a row. He is out there. I don't know what he's talking about at all. Okay.
Yeah.
No. He's completely vacant. I don't know what's wrong with him. Okay. Yeah. Tucker Carlson, I don't know if it's personal. Looks like it a little bit to me. I don't know. But I mean, Tucker doesn't go target someone and a powerful person without good reason. And he knows that Lindsey won't come and defend himself, because Lindsey knows that he's just a pawn of the deep state and the military industrial complex.
Right. Okay. No, I think it's right.
And I'm glad that Tucker tells his countless millions of followers that's who these people are. You want to blame everything on Trump. You want to blame everything on Biden. I'm sick and tired of this. There are people who've been around for decades, moving the pieces on the board. These are the people you need to look at.
Well, that's it. And I think we have Lindsey Graham, who is he's really the sorcerer's apprentice. I mean, he was John McCain's apprentice, and he's aspiring to be the John McCain who always supports any war anywhere, military force, military station everywhere. He's always for that, and he then pretends to be Mr. Conservative when it's election time. But again, he never really does anything very much. I mean, you remember all those years when he was the chairman of that Judiciary Committee, and he threatened, constantly threatening, he's going to get to the bottom of Russiagate, constantly. But I'm going to get down to what was the FBI doing. He didn't do anything. I mean, it was right within his jurisdiction. What was the FBI's involvement?
It was worse than that, George. He heard the behind the closed door testimonies of all these clowns that made statements publicly, but then behind closed doors said, well, I didn't really know. And he knew all that. Right. And he didn't say a word.
Even worse than that, because he actually sponsored legislation to prohibit Trump from firing Mueller. I mean, Trump wasn't going to fire Mueller, but nonetheless, he rushed to sponsor legislation to prevent Trump firing Mueller, even though it was obvious to everyone that this was a phony, baloney investigation. There wasn't anything there. All Mueller was doing was trying to track people into perjuring themselves so that he can say, oh, we've prosecuted all these people, which is in fact all that he came up with. And yet he goes and sponsors this legislation. So he did nothing all of those years. Constantly going on Sean Hannity's show. He said, I smell a rat. He would always say, I smell a rat. I'm going to hold hearings on this. Didn't do a damn thing. And basically he has presented no resistance at all to any of Biden's nominations, not just the nomination of judges, but some of the people in the DOJ that Trump appointed, the Biden appointed, some really weird people. Again, no resistance at all from Graham. And then, hey, election time, I'm Mr. Conservative, give me money.
Yep. During election time, he has this tip jar, but the rest of the time, he's just listening to his lobbyist friends. That's all it is, okay? Yeah. He's a complete fraud, okay? Yeah. Always has been. I give him kudos for sticking up for Kavanaugh. I try to be fair, but other than that, he's just the.
Well, he had to do that because if there's one thing that's the the Republicans, they stick with that whole Federalist Society. Corporatist mentality. Mitch McConnell, that's the only thing they care about. Those judges, basically, so the judges will rule in favor of the corporation. So they do stick for those judges. The only thing. And so that's right. Yeah, of course, he supports it.
But it doesn't always work out that well.
It doesn't work out that way. No, exactly. So yeah, and you're right about Mark Levin when he sort of started talking about Anne Frank and the Holocaust.
You hear the screams.
Yeah, screams, and you kind of think, what the hell has that got to do with the Taliban? I mean, you just I just still can't quite compute what's the link with the Taliban. So it was a bizarre, and he never explained it. And again, Hannity never asked him what's this got to do with Hitler and the Holocaust.
Well, have you noticed, just as a quick aside, is that when Mark Levin is on Hannity, it's not an interview.
No.
It's like 8 minutes, 20, no, it's like more like 4 minutes, 20 seconds, go. And they even say it, go.
Go, that's right, exactly.
And then he says, I'm done.
I'm done, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, don't get me wrong, folks. I mean, there's quite a few things that Mark Levin has talked about that I think is very interesting and it's worth listening to, okay? But I mean, just going on these wild tangents, okay? Again, George and I are much more focused on on systemic failure, on ideological corruption and rot. Okay, right. We can have a lot of fun laughing at Burrell and all that, and that's just levity. Okay, but we try to focus on what's wrong with the system and the ideology. Okay, right. And well, most media never want you to think
I think, but that's it. And the problem is that when you get hysteria from Levin about Hitler and the Holocaust, that only fuels the hysteria on the other side also about Hitler. So Trump is like Hitler, and then you got the people like Mark Levin. Taliban is like Hitler. So that's it. So you've got the perfect symmetry of idiocy. Hitler. Anyone you don't like, Hitler. So you would have thought that somebody should be a little bit more intelligent about this and not to invoke Hitler at the drop of a hat. But no, that's your. But I mean, I think Fox News does an awful lot of that. Incidentally, that the whole Hitler Holocaust. We can talk about that another time. But I guess it's not unusual.
Everybody, don't misunderstand. George and I obviously have complete contempt for CNN and MSNBC because they're this ideological sounding boards. Okay, but Fox News is also in its own way. Okay, so don't get us wrong. We're not picking sides here. No, we always pick out what we like. Okay, very specific. Okay, right. I'm not going to defend any news outlet to the wall. Never.
Right. That's right. So my next thumbs down is the creeping return of all of these COVID restrictions. So particularly in the United States, and as we've discussed many times before, all bad habits start in the United States and then spread to the rest of the world. But I mean, we have these news conferences in the White House, and everyone's wearing a mask. And you always kind of, why is everyone wearing a mask? I mean, presumably they've all been vaccinated. Or before they used to get a test, you get a COVID test, and they're all sitting wearing masks. Biden, when he was greeting all those parents, wearing a mask. I mean, looking at his watch, wearing a mask. And then you've got people like Bill de Blasio, who has just ordered every single person in the Department of Education to have a vaccine or be fired. There's no two ways about it. You can't even have the option, okay, I won't take the vaccine, but I'll be tested every 2-3 days. No, you either take the vaccine or you lose your job. So it's an amazing thing that here, we go through this whole history of COVID with the 2-week pause. We had the lockdowns, the masks, and then finally the vaccines, and then supposedly everything is going back to normal. Yeah.
Next variant.
That's it. That's obviously coming next. The third jab and then the fourth jab, and really you have to wonder. The ball is there for somebody, some political leader somewhere to say enough. 3 years of COVID is enough, and we're just going to have to live with it. We're not going to live. We're not going to live with lockdowns. We're not going to live with masks. We're not going to live with these endlessly pumping drugs into our bodies. Somebody, it's there. The ball is there for someone to pick it up.
Yep, it is. For me, it's the ultimate way to divide people. It is to identify. Okay, like they're that kind of person. Well, there's a lot of reasons why people take the vaccine. There's a lot of reasons why people don't. And I am vaccinated, so I feel perfectly safe in public, okay? I really, and I do wear a mask in the Moscow Underground because I'm a germaphobe, okay? I don't like other people's germs. I don't want to get a cold, all right? But, it's the way they're doing it here in Russia is basically, here are recommendations, but no one is forced, okay? You decide what you want to do for yourself, for your own protection and your role in protecting society, however you may define that, okay? There's no acrimony, there's none, okay? There are crazy conspiracy people out there, like everywhere, but I mean, the way they're doing it in the US, and like you said, bad habits start there, is that you cannot be you cannot, your good judgment isn't good enough for the powers that be. That's not the way our society and civilization came into being. Is basically, it's on you to be a responsible citizen, a responsible person, and it usually works out that way. You know how you get through a pandemic, George? You get through it.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's it. And that's really brings up the really the salient issue, which is that clearly the powers that be, the elites, don't want any return to normality. It's like they seized on this pandemic to bring in all of the draconian governmental measures that they'd always been planning on doing. I mean, it just happened before. This was planned for with the global warming. That was when they were the climate change.
Let's use the pandemic instead. Let's use the pandemic instead.
Yeah. Exactly. That's it. It's like they very cynically, like that awful guy, that Rahm Emanuel, everyone quotes him, and he's become it's not famous. I think it's in the Bartlett book of quotations that never let a crisis go to waste. Now, the elites have said, yeah, thank you for this crisis, and we are not going to let it go. We're absolutely going to hold on to this. We're going to have our mandates. We're going to have our lockdowns. We have our vaccine passports, and we are not going to end this because there's always going to be a new variant. Once we get through the Lambda variant, the alphabet starts all over again. So that's what I mean. I think it's got to be somebody. Somebody is going to emerge. I don't know who it's going to be. It doesn't look like it's going to be Trump, but somebody like DeSantis or somebody who's going to say enough. 3 years of COVID is enough. We're just going to have to live with it.
I think we should call it Operation Self-Licking Ice Cone.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's exactly what it is, ice cream cone.
Yeah.
Also, the interesting thing for me to watch all of this is the very, very real and oppressive economic. Well, who's affected most? Small businesses,
absolutely.
Middle class people, people that have to drive a long way to go to work. But if you're working at home and you're doing Zoom and all of this, why not? Why not? I don't have to go out. I mean, no cost to me. No cost to me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
So the people that are for all these lockdowns and all the mandates and all of that, they can agree with it at almost zero cost, and the people that they demonize, they're the ones that are most vulnerable. See, this is one of the things that is so ironic, is that the white supremacists out there, racism, systemic racism, they're attacking the weakest people in society. They're the ones that have the least amount of power.
Exactly.
The January 6th folks, the people that have the least amount of power, and they're not organized.
Right. And exactly. And particularly like small business owners, like restaurant and bar owners and everyone else, they're the ones who have been hit the hardest. And therefore, just keep it going. They don't care. I mean, look, it's no accident that Amazon, boom. I mean, the worth of Bezos has, I don't know how many, by what factor.
Because in some countries,
quadrupled or whatever, it's not, it just gives you a nosebleed even talking about how much money he's worth now. But Amazon, wonderful. I mean, it's great. The banks, everything is now done through electronic banking. Nice, very nice for them. People who rely on a cash economy, forget that. No one's going to use it.
Oh, and they've wanted to get rid of the cash economy for a long time.
Long time, exactly. So certain people are doing extremely well out of it, and they're not going to let it go. I don't. I mean, it doesn't look like there's anyone who's prepared to fight. I mean, where is Le Pen? I mean, it should be absolute golden opportunity for her to seize on this issue and ride to power next year in next year's election. But where is she?
And look at how the surveillance state is. They come out like gangbusters in this.
Right.
Give everyone a bracelet. Watch everybody on their phones. Track everything. Okay,
Exactly.
No cash. Oh, because we want to know what you're spending your money on. Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, this is. I think I always tell George kind of off air. Is that our conversations make me think deeper than I usually do. And I think you're right. I think it was the Green New Deal, and then we got the pandemic. Let's just go with this, okay?
Yeah.
And then you'll say, because of because we're facing all of this global warming and all of this, it's a perfect segue, isn't it?
Exactly, perfect segue. That's right, exactly. And again, it's all your fault. So it's like why is everyone bashing people imposing all these restrictions? Because it's your fault, because when you exist, you're spreading germs, you're spreading the virus. We've got to stop you doing anything. Just stay home and just.
But isn't that in line with your spreading bad ideas?
Spread bad ideas, exactly. Absolutely.
It works perfectly.
It works perfectly. Exactly.
Parallel.
Absolutely. Absolute parallelism. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
What else do I have? I have.
As Mark Lupin would say, I'm done.
I'm done. Exactly. Now I've got a couple of small ones, not huge ones. San Francisco plans to have cash for criminals, which is, they say, $300 billion. You get not 300, $300 per month as a kind of basic income. If they're giving it, you have to apply. Say, well, I'm somebody who's either likely to get shot or likely to do the shooting. Can I have my $300? And then apparently, if you have certain markers that you reach, like you get a job interview, not even get a job, you get a job interview, you get another $200, your bonus. So you could end up with $500 a month. Now, yeah, all right, $500 a month is not a huge amount of money, but it is money. It's not nothing.
It's a lot of money for a lot of people.
I think so. So this is quite nice. I mean, I think you should get to apply for a program. You remember in Dirty Harry, when the mayor of San Francisco, when they're discussing what are we going to do about this Scorpio who's demanding a ransom from the city, he says, well, the city of San Francisco doesn't pay criminals not to commit crimes. But apparently the city of San Francisco does pay criminals not to commit crimes.
Let me just extend this idea. Jeffrey Toobin will pay you $500 a month not to play with yourself on Zoom. Might be an incentive for him. Okay.
Yes.
No, this is incentivizing the worst possible behavior. Don't commit a crime. Okay. Right. I did. I'm not going to pay you not to.
No,
commit
I think it's exactly.
But see, this is what it coddles the worst aspects of our nature. Okay. As Jung, talked about the shadow, our shadow. And what we have to do is to keep our shadow in check, okay? And I think it's a very interesting concept because your worst instincts and you have to control yourself. And basically we're saying, no, let the shadow out. Let him out. Let your best shadow out, okay?
Right.
It's very coercive to society.
Right. No, I think so. I mean, I don't even know exactly what is the mechanics of this. So what if you do indeed shoot somebody? Does that mean that they don't give you any more money, or do you still get it? Hey, look, I mean, I did shoot someone, but I still deserve my $300 a month. I don't know. Is that the penalty you suffer?
I'm sure equity will be thrown into it. Okay, I mean, because of the socioeconomic circumstances of 200 years ago.
Yes. That's it. Yeah, So that's a nice program. And then one other small item is this: there's a professor at Duquesne University in Pennsylvania. His name is Professor Hook, Derek Hook, which I had never heard of. But apparently, he'd given a lecture saying something like that. Whites need to kill themselves in order to atone for whiteness, or to bring whiteness to a concept to an end. And of course, this caused outrage, and the university authorities said, no, he wasn't talking literally, and so on and so forth. Naturally, he's not going to be fired from his job. But what's interesting about this, and I'm not advocating that he be fired from his job, is of course, imagine if he had said something else, I think like blacks should kill themselves, or some other group, Japanese should kill themselves, or Chinese should kill themselves. Of course, how would people react then? And then think of all the academics who are fired for making controversial remarks, not like this one. Like, there was that professor at university who recently had objected to reparations payment. Boom, what did the university do? They didn't renew his contract. So it's a kind of nice way, you can get away with controversial statements as long as you're on the right political side, as long as the controversy is on that side of the political spectrum.
The entire history of humanity and all of biology, it's all about hierarchies. Hierarchies are everything. You see it in our personal lives. You see it in forests. The tall trees get most of the light, okay? That's a form, of hierarchy. The higher you get, the more power you have. Right. And I'm not kidding, all right? Right. Fish are the same way. Bigger you are, the more the other ones become right. What is my point here? Is that if you look at the entire history of human civilization, it's not all about white people, folks. It's about all kinds of people all over the world, different colors, creeds, and religions. Yeah. And you know what? What causes major social change is attacking, or first of all, recognizing and overthrowing a corrupt hierarchy, right. Okay? And that's how you should look at it. These people just take a sliver and think it answers all problems for all time, which is completely ahistorical and anti-intellectual, okay? I mean, look at the history of the slave trade. Did the Europeans go into the interior of Africa to capture slaves? No, because because of disease and everything. No, they stayed at the port. And who brought the slaves to them? Other blacks. Okay, that's right. White slavers are disgusting. Black slavers are just as disgusting, in my opinion, because they're both committed a mortal sin.
Yeah, but the point is that slavery is as old as human civilization, and there were wars. Wars have consequences, which is that the victors turn the vanquished into slaves. That's it. That was it. I mean, when Hegel's famous master-slave dialectic, he wasn't specifically referring to the African slave trade. He was, obviously talking about ancient Greece. But the point was that this is, an implicit within human history. That is that there's a moment in historical development of slavery, because you have war, and the punishment for losing a war is either death or enslavement. And that's it. And that was it. Yeah.
And nothing to do with your color.
Nothing.
And they had no. I mean, look, even into the 20th century, you have Arab societies still participating in slavery. And if you want to put a bow on top of this, George, what race of people in the world ended slavery or almost completely eradicated it? Okay, I give the British a lot of credit for that. Okay, okay, because it wasn't in purely their national economic interest to start attacking slaving countries, Spain, Portugal. Okay, it was every once in a while there's a noble cause. It's just simply wrong. Okay.
Right. No, that's right. I mean, it just became obvious then. But the point is that, look, human history is what it is. I mean, a lot of bad things happen because
that's why we have history, to remember bad things.
Ultimately, populating, fighting the elements, creating states whereby people can live together in close proximity without killing one another. All that requires a lot of work, and that's part of historical development, creating states, modern government, rule of law, all of that. Yeah, some people paid a price. I mean, that was, it didn't just spring up out of the soil. Hey, we got a great, we got a state, bound by the rule of law. Nice. hey, we've got a United Nations. Nice, great. You know, we just all just sprang out of the soil. It didn't need a lot of preparation, a lot of historical development to get there.
Well, going back to this professor, I don't know how someone becomes an academic at an institution like that. I would just say to Professor Hook, so the trajectory of humanity is basically paradise if you extinguish all white people. Why would you think that?
Right.
Why would anyone think that?
Right. Yeah. And particularly people say.
Look at the major arms producers in the United States. I think almost all of them now have female CEOs. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think the next time Biden bombs Syria, if you have a Black Lives Matter flag on the plane, it means it's okay.
No, and since Professor Hook is himself white, I mean, you know, if you want to say, you know, committing suicide, say you first. You go first. All right, yeah, I'm done. So
right, everybody.
That was it. So some people can breathe a sigh of relief.
All righty. First,
Professor Hook, but others.
First order of business. Every Friday, when people start remembering this religiously, every Friday, George and I are doing a super chat on YouTube, as long as YouTube allows us to do it. Okay. Also, if you want to do a Zoom call with us, please go to the locals page. Easy to do that. The store is up. Take a look at what we have. George is getting into the habit of doing live streams.
Exactly. That's also going to be a regular thing. Exactly.
And this week we'll do a Q&A because some of the questions are accumulating, and they're all sleeping behind me. Today's autumn is kind of tipping our way, so they're keeping each other warm. The tip jar. Okay, let me see if he reacts. Tip jar. Tip jar. Yep, he knows that term.
Tip jar.
Come on, bud. Come on. Please, Phil. Come on, buddy. Please stretch your legs.
He shows up. Tip jar. Yeah. Where's my tip? My tip just for existing.
He knows that's his cue. Okay, it's the only thing I can train him to do. Tip jar, and he runs. That's it.
What? A tip jar? Where's my tip?
Seriously, folks, we don't have we don't have any patrons other than yourselves. Okay, anything you can do. George and I try to do 2 a day, almost every single day of the week, and all these extra things we're doing. It's a real pleasure, but it is still work. Okay, so if you could help us out, even a little bit helps.
It always helps, and we're very grateful for all of your help and your support. And remember, the more you can help, the better the product will be. So that was.
We're on local, so go to thegaggle.locals.com and take it away, George.
And yes, exactly. And remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.